Right, ladies, gentlemen, just a reminder, this week on Thursday's class, the first two sessions are going to be normal lessons. The last hour-ish, is going to be a test. I will send you a link by email to get you onto the online test. As Miss Noof said last time or the time before, what was this test for? Well, it's very simple. It's for me to find out any weak areas in the class and for sorry, got a bit of interference there. So it's for me to see if there's any weak areas in the class so I can plan any revision bits. And it's for you to see how well you're doing. There is an important thing about this test. One, it's open book. You can use all the resource material I've sent you so far. Why? Because that's what's going to happen in the real exam, your final exam. Secondly, you should be more concerned about the things where you have to do stuff rather than remember stuff. Obviously, the more cities and countries you remember, the faster you do the exam. But if they ask you, where is Bamako? And you get a bit stuck on Bamako, well, don't forget, you can look it up, yeah? On the other hand, if there's a time calculation question, you can't look up the answer to that. You have to be able to work it out. What we're going to do today, rates of exchange, you can't look up an answer, you have to calculate an answer. Airline timetables, no, you have to be able to work it out. That's where you should be focusing. Obviously, you try and remember as much as you can because it speeds up the exam. As you have open book, did Mortada tell you if you're allowed to take your phones into the exam room? He hasn't told you anything?
He didn't tell us anything.
Okay, I'm going to check about phones because, you know, I've sent you PDF of each and every module.
Yes, if it's not allowed, then we have to print all the...
Yeah, well, that's what I'll check with him, whether you have to bring it hard copy or you can use soft copy. I hope you can use soft copy because if you can use soft copy and it's PDF, when you read a PDF file, in the top right-hand side, you can actually search keywords. Yeah, and that makes looking up things a bit faster. So, like I said, on Thursday, most important thing is how are you doing on the stuff that you have to calculate, work out? Yeah. If your memory's not that good, don't worry too much because you're allowed to take the book. Okay, but if you have to look up every single question on general knowledge, you're going to run out of time. Maps are always a bit tricky, which is a reason why I think they may not allow phones because it's too easy to Google. But I'll check that and I'll get Murtada to let you know. So we've got quite a full class now. We are going to get started. And I've incorporated some of the questions that were raised in the last lesson. So we're going to do a little bit of revision sort of stuff. So usual thing, if when you see the screen, if you could tell me, and then we'll go from there.
It's good.
Thank you. Right. Fares displays. Now that's something Ms. Fahima is also showing you in Sabre. But fares can come in different ways. Some airlines, you can access some of their fares through Sabre. Some net fares is not in Sabre. You have a price list and stuff. So we have to know both ways. Okay. So money. I've already given you this, the different currency codes. Do you remember I gave you a list of currency codes? No, you don't remember?
Yes.
You do? Okay, good. Okay, so this part you've already had. So that's why we can go through the lesson a little bit faster. Don't forget, the reason for currency codes is it makes it easier to identify exactly which country currency you're talking about. Normally, usually, the currency code is the two-letter country code plus one extra letter for the currency. So, for instance, here we have a Singapore dollar. The country code for Singapore is SG. The currency is a dollar, and yes, their code is SGD. Let me find out who's talking. I'll put them on mute. Sorry, whoever's got their speaker on, we can hear your phone call, okay? Right. US dollars, United States, D for dollar. There are exceptions like this one, the euro. The euro is used by 19 different countries. Hang on, who's... Let me try and see who's...
Fatma's talking.
Yeah. Okay, we're all done. Start again. Okay, hopefully you're back with the screen now, yes?
Yeah.
Right, thank you. We've mentioned NUCs, neutral unit of conversion. Actually, it's also called neutral unit of construction. Okay. This is pretend money that IATA have used so that it makes fare calculations easier. Now, you're not really going to see that much in this course. If you come back and do the foundation where we actually calculate fares, then you'll see that, wow, I'm so glad there's an NUC, because if there isn't, I'm going to have to do this fare calculation in 3 currencies, which obviously makes it harder. So for every local currency fare, next to it is the equivalent in NUCs. So I can add up all the fares from different countries in NUCs, get a total in NUCs and change that to real money. And that is what we'll be doing today. So don't forget, you've got to name the currencies that are in your list. I don't think you've had a chance to learn 50 currencies yet. Which currencies have decimal points? That's what we're doing today. Okay. Define direct fares and identify currency of the country of commencement and the country of commencement. okay? Neutral units of construction and apply rounding units. So about half of what was in that module, we're going to do today. The rest, the currency codes, currency names, that you've already had. So we know if we change NUCs to a currency, we use something called the IROE, IATA rate of exchange, okay? If we change a currency to a currency, then we use something called the BSR, the banker's selling rate. So we've got to be very careful with these two exchange rates. NUC, IROE, currency, BSR. We're also going to be looking at some special or restricted fare rules. Most fares nowadays, it's the cheaper fares, you can't do this, you must do that. If you change this, you pay that. Some of the rules can be a little bit tricky, so we'll be looking at those today. We're going to look at, common restrictions. The most common restriction for a restricted fare is the number of stopovers. On a flexible fare, you can have as many stopovers as you like, providing the number of miles you are flying is less than the maximum. All right, special groups. Now, special passenger type. This special is very difficult for Germans. Yeah, my accent is quite good, but I still have trouble with special. Yeah, it's not a group of sounds we have in German. Right, there's two ways you can get fares. Most of you will get your fares through a GDS, i.e. Sabre. However, if you do a lot of corporate travel, i.e. business travel, you may also have this book called the Passenger Air Tariff. And it's basically got every fare from everywhere to everywhere. Sabre is very good at stuff that's in the system. If it's in the system, Sabre can bring it out. But Sabre, if you give it a new routing or follow certain rules, Sabre gets it mixed up. And Miss Fahima, she had an instant of that a couple of years ago. I think it was with KLM. KLM were doing a fare calculation, but they forgot one of the basic rules, which is in the passenger air tariff book. Okay. Ms. Fahima and I sat down, we worked it out, and we proved KLM wrong. Now, I think that shows you understanding fares can be very important. Right, we're going to be looking at routing fares. There are some fares where you pay one price and they say you can go here, 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 and here. And if you do that, you get it at that price. You can't change it. You can't add cities or take away cities, but equally, you don't have to worry about the miles. Yeah, they've taken care of all that for you. A routing fare means just follow this, you get it at that price. Don't check mileage. If it's not a routing fare and it's not point to point, you have to check mileage. And that's where that M comes in that we talked about last session. If you check the mileage, you have to have an M. And one way we know if a fare has not used mileage is if there's no M. Now, a point-to-point journey has how many cities? Two.
Two.
Thank you. Yes, two. Thank you very much. If a journey is point to point, you do not check the mileage. If I've got a journey and I'm going Bahrain, London, New York, now that's more than two cities, isn't it? Bahrain, London, New York.
Yeah.
Right. But there's no M. In that case, it must be a routing fare. In other words, they say you can go here, here, and here. Don't worry about the mileage. You can have this fare. So there's two times we don't use an M: point to point and routing. If it's not one of those two, it's a mileage fare. Okay. Now, one of the things that's very important is to look at transfers and stopovers. I'm going to go through all the rules about what is a transfer, what is a transit, what is a connection, because transfers, connections, people get mixed up. Yeah, especially in the beginning, of course. So here's a typical sort of fares display. You've asked for a fares display, 2nd of January, Bahrain to Dubai. Whoop, up comes the information. It says Bahrain, Dubai, BHD. That means it's quoting the fares in Bahrain dinars. LN means line number. Computers are really dumb, yeah? You have to tell them if you're doing something, you have to say which line number you're talking about. You can't say to a computer, oh, you see that Emirates fare for $350? Because the answer is no, it can't. You have to say line 5. Then the computer says, oh yeah, I know now. They're very good at memorizing stuff, but they're not very bright. So, fare basis. This means what is the fare based on? The base fare. The base fare is just the fare, no surcharges, no stopover charges, not just the basic fare. Booking class, we can use M or B if it's with Gulf Air. If it's with airline CX, can I use M and B for booking class?
No.
No, I have to use Y. Then we got 3 fares here. Yeah, a YLE1M. What do you think the letter Y stands for? Have a guess. I'll give you a clue. It's a class code.
Economy.
Economy. The next letter in a fare basis is often the season. L means basic. H means peak. There's a habit you know in the world, YL, we call it economy low season, which is actually sort of correct, but technically it's economy basic season. YH is economy high season, but we call high season peak. So watch out for those two. E normally means it's an excursion fare. And there are different types of special restricted fare, which we'll come to later. Somewhere in there is also how long is the ticket valid for? Now, if I'm buying a normal ticket, a full ticket, do you know how long it's valid for? Full fare tickets, how long are they valid for? It's 1 year, yeah? 1 year from the date of departure, not the date you issue it, not the date you paid for it, but the date of departure. So if I buy a ticket for travel on the 1st of February, it's a full economy flexi ticket. It is valid until the 1st of February next year. That's not much use to people going on holiday, yeah? But for business people, you never know, that might work for them. Maybe they're going to another country for replacement. They'll be there 4 months or maybe 6 or maybe 7. They don't know, they want flexibility. That could be the right ticket for them. On the other hand, if you're going to visit your family in another country and you've got a 2-week holiday, paying all that extra money for a 1-year ticket is not good. Maybe find the cheapest ticket. And can you see here 30?
Yeah.
Yeah, that means it's valid for 30 days. Okay. Another area that tells me how long it's valid for is this last column, min, max. Minimum stay, that means you must stay at least this number of days. Maximum, you've got to come back by this date. So these two tickets, the Y tickets, there's no minimum and maximum. Do you agree? Yeah? Right. That means no restriction. If there's nothing there, there's no restriction. However, if we look at the fare on line 3, 7/1M, that means wherever they're going to, they've got to spend at least 7 days. Yeah, and they can only come back after 1 month. Okay, they have to come back within 1 month. Right, like I said, Miss Fahima will be going through fares displays with you in more detail. Depending, if you use some travel agents have access to direct to the airline's own database. In other words, you don't go through Sabre, you go directly to the airline's database. And that's sometimes a little bit different. But the information's there somewhere. Fares, Bahrain to Bangkok. First class, unrestricted one-way, NUC. Yeah. First class, second level one-way, boom. First class, unrestricted return, boom. First class, level 2, restricted, done. Global indicator, MPM, TPM. Now this one's quite important, this MPM. Means when you buy this ticket, Bahrain to Bangkok, you get 1,103 miles. So if you go direct, no problem. If you go Bahrain, Dubai, Yangon, Bangkok, and you add up all the miles and it's less than 1,103, you don't pay any extra. So where do you get these miles? Well, it's also in the fares. TPM. TPM is the actual number of miles you're flying. Okay? Here's another way of looking at it. They've got the fare basis here, one way and return. Instead of 2 columns, they're doing it that way. But the information is the same. You've got fare in local currency and NUCs, a carrier code. Do you remember what YY means?
Any airline.
Any airline can use it, exactly. Okay. Global indicators, MPM, routing. Well, these are not routing fares, these are mileage fares. Can you see the M? that means it's a mileage fare. If it's a routing fare, what letter would you expect to see? Routing. Go on, have a guess.
R.
Thank you. It's as easy as that. So what is the economy return flexi fare? That means the full fare 1 year for the following: Moscow, Cairo, Tokyo, Singapore. Okay. Hang on, let's make this. Oops, what's happened here? Sorry, I'm having trouble with this again. I love technology when it works. I hate it when it doesn't work. Have you got it back?
Yeah, it's coming.
Right. Now I've got a blank screen. Ah, here we go. Now we've got RUFETSEH fares. If you've already made a reservation and you've built up your PNR, you can ask the system to quote the fare. Okay, then you don't have to worry about the global indicator. But sometimes you have to make up a routing, you have to do something, and the system cannot price it. You have to work out the price. And the reason the system doesn't do it is because no one's told them, hey, here's a routing, here's the costing. Once it's in the system, it can be used again in the future, but somebody has to put it in the system before you can take it out. So if I'm going Moscow to Seoul, that's area 2 to 3. Everyone agree? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, you can, okay. Right, Moscow to Seoul is area 2 to 3. So we start with the RU fares. That means I have to go from Russia, Moscow and St. Petersburg. Next stop, Japan and Korea. Now, I've got Japan and Korea, but after Moscow, is that my next stop?
No.
No, I got Cairo in the middle, so it can't be RU. FE is Russia or the Ukraine. Next stop, area 3. Is Cairo in area 3?
No.
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 Okay.
2.
2. Next one, TS. Europe. Yeah, Moscow's in Europe. Next stop, Japan, Korea. No. The only one left then is EH. Do you agree?
Yes.
Right. So I'm going to have to use the EH fares here. Okay. Do I want one way or return?
It's on.
What does it say?
One way.
Okay.
No, here it says return. So I want this line, EH, and I want the economy, Y class, return flexi fare. Well, this is economy, F for flexi. So the fare is EH. Tell me, look at this answer here and look at that. Is that right? Does that look right to you? Can you spot anything odd? I mean, everybody agrees it's EH fare. Do you agree?
Yeah.
Right. Got some chats up here as well. Right. It says here a one-way journey, but I want the return flexi fare. Yeah. So I want that, but I want the return flexi fare, which is this. If they say based on this itinerary, then I use that. So is there some confusion here? There is. Here it says return, but the itinerary is one way. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if it's return, it's 5844.08. If it's based on this itinerary, then it's 3255.60. Do you agree? All right. Okay. Let's move on. Going back to the previous fares display, a point-to-point fare calculation. If it's point-to-point, there's only two cities. So here's, say, the itinerary, Bahrain, GF to Dubai. Okay, so Bahrain, GF to Dubai is 700. Here's the fare. After the fare, we put NUC, and NUC is basically like saying, here is the total. Everything together, here is the total. So if the fare is 700 and it's not a return, there's no coming back, so the NUC is 700. And we finish it with end. Now, I can guarantee almost 100% you are going to get things like this in your exam. You can't memorize these, you have to know how they work. So we're going to do a little bit of practice on this today. For point-to-point journeys, we don't check mileage. So do we need an M anywhere?
No.
No, okay. So as there's no mileage check, there's no M in the fare calculation. Okay, let's have a look at this one. We're going to do Moscow, Seoul, Moscow. So out is Moscow, Seoul. In is Moscow, Seoul. The inbound, the one coming back to the country of commencement, is always reversed. Okay, always reversed when you do the fare calculation. However, when you do the linear format, you put it back into the order it's flown. So Moscow, Seoul, that's definitely going to be an RU fare. If I start in Moscow and finish in Moscow, is that a one-way?
Return.
It's a return. So return is 450.35. Half of it on the way out, half of it on the way back, total. So outbound is Moscow, KE to Seoul. How many cities in this fare component?
2.
Right, it's point to point. I do not need an M. Coming back, Seoul, Moscow, 2 cities, point to point, I don't need an M. And if I take this plus this, I get this as my total. Where you see NUC, think of it as NUC total. So outbound, point to point, no M. Inbound, point to point, no M's. This has one price unit. We've got one price here. But I'm going out and in, which means two fare components. Okay. Bahrain, Riyadh, Dubai. How many cities here?
3.
3. Is it point to point?
No.
Right, and I don't have a routing fare. So it's not point to point, it's not a routing fare. So I have to have M in front of the 700. Okay. So NUC total 700. In other words, if I fly Bahrain to Dubai direct, or I have this stopover in Riyadh, I actually pay the same fare. Why? Because it's a full flexi fare and it's based on miles. So when I fly Bahrain, Riyadh, Dubai, yeah, the number of miles I'm flying is less than the maximum permitted miles for that fare. Okay, so not point to point, we must check the mileage. Yeah, the TPM is the mileage flown. How many miles do you actually fly? And the maximum is how many does the fare allow you? We did check mileage, it has an M. Okay, we move on. This time, Moscow, Seoul, Tokyo. So that's still RU. Back to Seoul, Moscow. Okay. Outbound is Moscow, Seoul, Tokyo. How many cities there? San. Do you speak Chinese?
Not yet. It's a 3.
Not yet? Okay, Wahed. You're
3.
stuck now, are you? Okay, we've got 3. So it's not point to point. Let's look at the fare here. What does it say here?
Mile.
Mileage fare, not a routing fare, a mileage fare. So if I've got more than 2 cities, I need an M, and I need an M here. And this figure, NUC total, is this plus this added together. Okay, so that's explaining it. Right, point to point, a fare component with only 2 cities, okay, or points. You can have a one-way point to point, London, Bahrain. You can have a return point to point, London, Bahrain, whoops, sorry, that should be London, Bahrain, London. Sorry, typing mistake there. If you have this, only 2 cities, you only have 2 cities, it's point to point, you do not check mileage, you do not have M in the fare calculation. So London, Bahrain, only 2 cities, no M. London, Bahrain out, no M. Coming back, no M. Right, what if it's not point to point? Okay, well, we've got a choice of 2 things. We can have a mileage fare and a routing fare. Now, we haven't done routing fares yet, so let's assume everything so far is going to be a mileage fare. When we look up the fare, we've got the M saying mileage. Now, London, Paris, Bahrain. What type of journey is that? One way, return, open jaw, what type? Sorry. Yeah. Okay, it's a one way. Everyone agree? Now, return. London, BA, Paris, Bahrain, GF, Amsterdam, London. And here's the reason why on a return journey, we have to do two separate fare components. If you look at this one, we're going out London, Paris, Bahrain. But we're coming back Bahrain, Amsterdam, London. We're coming back a different way, yes? So the miles could be different. It's possible. That's why it's two fare components. Long story short, 1, 2, 3 cities. It's not point to point. It's not routing. It needs an M. Bahrain, Amsterdam, London. It's not point to point. It needs an M. Okay? So for non-point to point journeys, we check the mileage and it needs an M. Now, in this course, we do not check mileages. Okay, we just have to understand the idea. Okay, hopefully you got a pen and paper handy. Here is a journey. You're going to go from Rio to Buenos Aires. Your airline is RG. The fare you're going to charge is 100. Now, that's obviously not the real fare, okay? It's just, I don't want you thinking about the numbers. I want you to think about it. I would like you to write down what is the linear format for this. What is the linear format for this? So when I say linear format, I mean like this. You have to do this, but for this journey. Are you done? Are you ready?
Yeah.
Right. First thing we do is the itinerary. So it's going to be Rio, RG to Buenos Aires. Rio, RG to Buenos Aires, followed by the amount. Why is there no M here?
So,
It's per.
what?
Yeah.
Point to
point. Thank you very much. It's point to point, so it doesn't need an M. So we've only got one fare, so the NUC total is the same. End. It's as simple as that. Now one that's not so simple. Stockholm to London, and the airline is BA. Then return London to Stockholm, airline SK. So I start in Stockholm and I return to Stockholm with London in the middle. Agreed? So do you think this is a one-way?
No.
No, it's a return. But how many different cities? Stockholm. Thank you. It's point to point. So will you need an M?
No.
No,
No.
no. Okay, have a go. Are we ready? Oh, here it is. Stockholm, BA to London. Ah, how many put 100 here? Did I catch you or did you put 100?
I went already.
Ooh, you put 100? Well done. Because
Yeah.
if that's 200, that's the return fare. So you use half out, half back. Okay? Your NUC total is 200, but it's half out, half back. So if I didn't catch you here, well done. Right. Little bit more confusing now. Rio to Buenos Aires airline RG, then Buenos Aires to Paris with AF, and your fare is NUC 200. Now, how many different cities are there here?
3.
Right, I'll tell you now, this is not a routing fare. That should give you a clue what to do. And what to do is what you do now. And as this is a simple one way, you should have this. Rio, RG to Buenos Aires, AF to Paris, with an M, 200 NUC, 200 end. Okay. Do you notice between this number here, 200, and the word NUC, can you see there's no gap?
Yeah.
But between
Because number and
thank you, you've got it. Number, letter, number, no gap. Letter, gap. Thank you very much.
letter. Okay.
Right. Oh, you might want to write this one down first. Stockholm to London with BA, then London to Dublin with FY, and coming back in Dublin to London EI, and London to Stockholm SK. So this is obviously a return. It is not a routing fare. Please try. And here's your answer. Stockholm BA to London, FY to Dublin, M 200, because it's half of the return fare. EI to London, SK to Stockholm, M, the other half of the 400. NUC total 400, end. Right. This is something you can practice at home tonight, but let me explain it to you now. Out, Moscow to Lisbon with airline TP. In, Lisbon to St. Petersburg with SU. So let's think about it. We're going Moscow, Lisbon, St. Petersburg. What type of journey have I got here? Is it a one-way? No. Return journeys cannot have gaps. So could it be a type of return journey?
Not open journey.
It's an
Open
open
jaw.
jaw. But let's see, if it's an open jaw, does it make any difference to how we do the fare? Right, open jaws, do you use one ways or half returns? We use half returns on open jaws. The only fare we use one ways for is one ways. Everything else we do in this course is half return. So I'm going to have to take Moscow to Lisbon, half return, which is 100. Yeah. Then back to St. Petersburg, which is 300. Am I going to use the fare Lisbon to St. Petersburg or St. Petersburg to Lisbon? Which way round should I use the fare? Okay, let me repeat the rule. If you return to the country of commencement, reverse the fare component. So what is the country where you commence this journey?
Moscow.
And the country?
Russia.
Russia. So when I fly Lisbon to St. Petersburg, am I coming back to Russia, the country of commencement?
Yes.
Fine. In that case, I reverse it. The fare I would use is not Lisbon led, it's led Liz. Okay. NUC total, the outbound, the inbound added together, end. Right, here we got another one. Lisbon, Madrid. Madrid, Moscow. Coming back, okay, we have Lisbon, Warsaw, St. Petersburg. So what is the country of commencement? Country.
Madrid.
No, out Lisbon to Madrid. So Lisbon is in Portugal. Yes, Lisbon, Portugal. Okay, so outbound, we're going to use the fare Lisbon to Moscow. Lisbon to Moscow is 400. Inbound, yeah, inbound, we're going to use Lisbon, Warsaw, St. Petersburg. Does that look right to you? Yeah, 150. So 200, 150, 350. But there's M's. Can you see the M's? So one way, returns, open jaws, doesn't matter. Okay, the linear format, the formula remains the same. Number one, if you are on a one-way journey, use one-way fares. Everything else, take half the return fare. If you return to the country of commencement, not the city, the country of commencement, reverse the fare component. Okay, that's it. Those rules don't change. So here you have an open jaw. We're going to go San Francisco to Tokyo, Tokyo to Los Angeles. Okay, and then at the other end, there's a bus in between. So if I start in San Francisco, okay, I start in San Francisco. San Francisco to Tokyo, will I use one-way fares or half return fares? Okay, is this a half return? So I take the San Francisco, Tokyo, half return fare. Tokyo, Los Angeles will be half the return fare. But when I fly Tokyo to Los Angeles, am I coming back to the country of origin?
Yeah.
Yeah, in that case, I would use the Los Angeles, Tokyo half return fare. If I did this fare calculation, San Francisco, Tokyo, is that with or without M?
With M, with M.
San Francisco, Tokyo? How many cities here? San Francisco, Tokyo.
2 city.
So with an M or no M?
No, without.
Without. Tokyo, Los Angeles, how many cities?
2.
2. So no M. Remember, this journey is open jaw. So there's 2 fare components. Out, San Francisco, Tokyo. Back, Tokyo, Los Angeles. But because it's coming back to the country of origin, the fare is reversed. But each fare component, the out, San Francisco, Tokyo, 2 cities, point to point, no M. Coming back, Tokyo, Los Angeles, 2 cities, point to point, no M. Is that a bit clearer now?
Yeah.
Okay. Right. Well, that's that introduction done. I can see we are going to have to do I can see we're going to have to do a bit more work on linear formats, because when you get the PNR, you get the fare, you get all this information, but the fare breakdown is in this format. If you can't read this format, you don't know how they constructed the fare. You don't know, hang on, if I do this and there's a 5M, there's a surcharge, what if I do this? Could I get the fare lower? Machines cannot help you with this. You know, you put in an itinerary or you build a PNR, the system costs that PNR. It doesn't think, hang on, If I do this city first and then that one, would it work out cheaper because it's less miles? The machine can't do that. You can. So this is why it's important to understand how fares are made by the system, because sometimes you can make a fare better than the system. Ah. Anyway, we're now at about 8 minutes past 4. So we're time for our first break. If you haven't already got one, please get a calculator handy for the next bit. Unless you can do this.